But nowadays, the ability to spread news and information is so democratized between Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all these other social media platforms, that a lot of people have a voice to bring up concerns about people who have behavior that is deemed problematic.
So you are free to have your opinion. No one is taking your opinion away from you. You just have to be aware that if you are saying something about a group of people, regardless of what your intentions are, you have to be ready that if that thing that you're saying is offensive, that you're going to receive backlash for it.
Let me put you on game.
So last week we had our DaBaby conversation and we talked about his controversial comments, and that kind of led us like off the beaten path into a cancel culture conversation that we decided to delete and kind of have as its own conversation. So I wanted to talk to you about cancel culture as a whole and its existence. How do you feel about cancel culture overall in today's climate?
To be honest, I have mixed feelings on cancel culture. And those feelings come from the fact that it's not a universally understood concept. I originally, as I was thinking about this topic, I decided to write down a loose definition that I could come up with as it being like, it's about outcries that proclaim misbehavior as a common thing, and that these outcries, they come from different places to various degrees of personal conduct in professional as well as entertainment settings, and bringing people to task for the things that they do that is, deemed a misbehavior. But then I decided to do some digging, and I found a very fascinating article from the Pew Research Center. And there's so many different definitions. So to start off, at least the most popular definition was that Americans define cancel culture as actions taken to hold others accountable. They found that about 44% of US adults who have at least heard a fair amount about cancel culture defined it as actions taken to hold others accountable. But what's interesting is that there's another 46% who haven't heard much about cancel culture or haven't heard anything at all about cancel culture. So, and then that also tends to change with relative education level as well as age. Older individuals and people who have less education tend to care or think or have heard less about cancel culture, and those who have at least a college degree and are younger have heard a lot more about cancel culture. So there's definitely a cultural divide. But then some of the second and third most common responses to what cancel culture is censorship of history of speech, which is more likely to be heard from conservative folks, as well as mean-spirited actions taken to cause harm to others. And again, these are definitions of cancel culture that people kind of have in their mind, as well as people canceling anyone that they disagree with. And so that led me to have a lot of compassion for just this whole ethos of cancel culture and what it is, what it means to different people. And it makes me wonder, does it actually exist? Like you said, well, not like you said, but it just brought, because there's so many different definitions, how do you actually nail down what cancel culture is? So, based on that, what does that mean to you, or how do you think about it?
I think it's a mix of both of those things. I think it's primarily mostly public corrections and public outcry against problematic behavior. I think that's probably the large portion of it, but I do think that like there is some legitimacy to the argument from conservatives where it seems like there are certain people that will take advantage of that, of the existence of quote unquote, or the debated existence of cancel culture, and they will use that to quote unquote cancel people that they don't like. I think overwhelmingly it's a good thing. I think overwhelmingly it's positive in terms of actually holding people accountable for problematic behavior. But I do think that there's a small amount of people that like very small. I think maybe like, let's say 97-3 in terms of percentages, in terms of like people that will use it for like nefarious means, in terms of canceling people for really small offenses, or canceling people that they never liked in the first place, and kind of using cancel culture as an opportunity to get people out of here. Like a kind of, or like a not leaving room for people to grow, like
Right.
canceling someone for a minor offense without actually giving an opportunity for the person to apologize, or for them to show a pattern of change behavior, or them learning from their mistakes. So I think overwhelmingly cancel culture is a good thing, but I do think, like I said, that there are small aspects of it that are a little like a bit like overcorrections, you know?
Yeah.
But in terms of like where it comes from, I think cancel culture comes from a largely positive cultural shift, where I think it's much easier to call out and in turn receive consequences for problematic behavior. I think for those people that fear it, in many ways, it's a response from people that never really had to deal with consequences for their actions and their words. I think that like if you look, let's say 20 years in the past, like you could say something racist, or you could say something sexist and or xenophobic or whatever, and a lot of times like there weren't many consequences for it. It was almost like a slap on the wrist, and that was it. And that kind of leaves the people that are the subject of these comments kind of out to dry. Like these people
Right.
can say anything they want about us, they can do anything to us, and there aren't any real consequences. So I think the creation of what we now know as cancel culture kind of mitigates that, and kind of
Yeah.
gives people that are marginalized or that are being talked about in these disparaging ways an opportunity to actually express it. Hey, this is wrong, and you should have consequences for saying or for doing something like that. And that leads people that I feel that are very entitled, or who have never had to be checked for that kind of behavior, like they kind of lash out in a very childish way, and they'll say like, well, now I feel like I can't say anything, like I can't express my opinion. What about, this amendment or that? Like they can't really process or deal with the backlash that comes from, because they never had to. So I think that kind of speaks to what I was speaking about earlier in terms of the positives of cancel culture.
Yeah. And to kind of expand on that point a little bit, I think that cancel culture in a lot of ways has always existed. Outcries and people saying that, oh, that person is wrong or foul for saying this, that, or third, or doing this action, hurting this person, either physically, verbally, emotionally, what so have you. And in a lot of ways, cancel culture, I feel like, whether it was the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, was primarily handled by the media and the printing press. So newspapers, magazines, tabloids, the daily news that you would see on TV, they would really hold the reins of cancel culture. They decided, okay, we're going to push this news story, we're going to suppress that news story. So if you hear rumors of Bill Cosby serial raping people, or sexually assaulting people, or drugging them, whatever have you, and you're a journalist, you kind of push that to the side, like, Bill, whatever. But nowadays, the ability to spread news and information is so democratized between Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all these other social media platforms, that a lot of people have a voice to bring up concerns about people who have behavior that is deemed problematic. So in a lot of ways, the media, the traditional legs of the media, no longer hold the keys to cancel people, to either promote them or to demote them and take them off their throne. Mm-hmm. You saw what happened with guys like Michael Jackson. You could say in some ways he was canceled, at some point when where he lost favor with the media amongst his alleged,
child abuse accusations, yeah.
Yes, and that whole situation and how that really panned out, and just the way tabloids hit him, especially when it came to, like, his appearance and the changes in his physical appearance. And so I say all that to say that it's really interesting the way that it has morphed into something that just brings people to task for their actions. And even some small offenses, whether it's somebody who doesn't tip well at a restaurant, you know, or you have
Yeah.
an Ellen DeGeneres that is, you know, verbally or borderline abusive to her employees and her workforce. At least people are being made aware of problematic behavior and are being shown that, hey, we aren't going to stand for this. And
Yeah.
I think that ultimately it's the human spirit to try to correct poor behavior. And it's a normal thing that happens. It's just a label that has been deemed toxic by people who I feel like are seeing the negative aspects of it, or seeing people, like you said, use it for nefarious ways.
Yeah, it's a good point about like the democratization of news, essentially, with social media and everyone having a platform. Because like if you look at the news and who it's being told by and who it's being presented by, a lot of times it's white men, to be perfectly
Mhm.
honest. So there isn't a whole lot of room for like nuanced discussion or like for empathy for groups of people that don't look that way. So I think that if you, with the democratization of uh spreading news, I think that it offers an opportunity for people that don't look that way or aren't the majority to actually have their opinion. So that's kind of where it comes from as well. Because if the story is only being told by one group of people, it makes it a lot harder for that group of people in particular to be taken to task for their behavior, essentially, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually a good thing. But to get more into cancel culture, I wanted to actually talk about whether or not you think that it actually exists, you know, because I think that it's become so much of an idea,
Mhm.
essentially, like where people don't necessarily have a handle, like you said earlier, on exactly what it is. But I wanted to talk about it from like an effectiveness standpoint. Like,
Right.
because the idea that cancel culture exists implies that it is effective and people are actually out here really getting canceled. So I wanted to talk to you about that because I personally think that like it doesn't necessarily exist in the way that we think it exists,
Mm.
because you could be canceled by a group of people and be fully accepted by another group of people. Like
Right.
with someone like Michael Jackson, like there's an entire group of people that believe the allegations and there's a group of people that don't believe it. So even though he may be canceled to the people that do believe what he did happened, then there's people that don't believe it that didn't cancel. Even within the group of people that do believe that he did what he did, like he's still not fully canceled to those people, because there's people that will
Right.
believe that he did what he did but still bump Thriller.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like Thriller goes like, you know, so it's a and that gets into the, you know, separating the art from the artist and whether or not you want to do that. But like, it's very difficult to cancel an entire group of people. Bill Cosby is proven to have done like, you know, dozens of heinous acts, but he's canceled to the majority for sure. But there's still like a group of people that will cape for the guy and actually hope he gets out of prison, or hope he gets his show back and is able to, you know, make money off of the Cosby Show, and people will come to his defense. So I wanted to get your opinion on what you think about the actual existence of cancel culture.
Yeah, I think that at the end of the day, people always have their stands. People always have, especially entertainment people that get to a certain level, they will have the people that are their diehard fans that love their story, that love their art form and what they've been able to produce and create. And so I think that as long as you have those hardcore fans, it's hard to actually be canceled, especially nowadays, again, where you have a democratization of media. People have the ability to self-promote. They don't have to jump on this news station or that news station, this radio station, or come on this talk show to get support.
Mm-hmm.
So if they get blackballed by a bunch of producers on TV, well, they have their Instagram live where they can go live, get 100,000 people to show up and say, hey, I got this new album, come listen to it with me. You know, I'm going to be at this show, come see me. I think the cancel culture question a lot of times has a bit murkier of a position when it comes to politics. And there's a whole another conversation to have about politics and cancel culture, where you see people who might not subscribe to certain liberal ideas or even conservative ideas get shouted down by those who disagree with them politically, and will literally get canceled from appearing, let's say, on a college campus to talk, or will get shouted down in a debate where they actually try to debate an idea with someone that they disagree with. And you'll see some ad hominem attacks that really lowers the bar for conversations. And those people will get support from the people that want to hear what they want to hear, and they'll get jeers from people that don't want to hear what they're saying. So, but it bleeds into so many different things that the idea of cancel culture, when you actually try to define it, it almost feels like vapor. It means something different to whoever is seeing or looking at it or is beholding it. And so from that standpoint, I feel like it doesn't exist. It's just something that is out there that has taken on a different name. It's something that has always been out there that has just taken on a different name and form. And people use it to whatever and they feel like will justify, or to justify their actions. To justify their actions, essentially, whether you're the person being canceled or the person getting canceling others. You say, I'm using, let's cancel X, Y, and Z person. You know what I mean? Or, they're trying to cancel me, I'm a victim.
Yeah, I think we also got to consider the fact that, like, outside of canceling people that are public figures, it's even hard to cancel people in our own lives. Like, if you think about it, like, I think people love to think that there's this moral high ground that they can step on where they are holier than thou, and they want to operate in this place where they hold celebrities to this incredibly high standard sometimes. But, like, if you look at our own lives, like, many people have family members, friends that say and do problematic things all the time, but they're still invited to the functions. They're still our friends. They're still within our lives, even though they do some things that are just as bad or worse than what these celebrities are doing, because they're people. And not to make any excuses for these kinds of actions. Like, they're all reprehensible for the most part. And we don't need to make excuses for these people, and we don't need to accept them into our lives, but some people still do. And that's just part of being human, is being hypocritical and being flawed. So I don't think that it helps on either end to pretend that we're perfect, that we know everything,
Yeah. And so then that makes me ask, is there a way to redefine it or reframe cancel culture for a positive and a concretely positive end? And can it be used as a tool to give people the opportunity to learn from their mistakes and actually become better? And is that possible in this microwave world where we see things happen and the outcries make it seem like you'll never be forgiven? But like you said, we are flawed, and the pedestal that we put people on is sometimes unfair.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be redefined, because I think the only way that it would need to be redefined is if people were actually out here getting canceled, and didn't deserve it. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I think it's operating the way that it should be, in terms of, like, you are free to have your opinion. No one is taking your opinion away from you. You just have to be aware that if you are saying something about a group of people, regardless of what your intentions are, you have to be ready that if that thing that you're saying is offensive, that you're going to receive backlash for it. You're no longer going to be able to say these kinds of things and just have it be labeled as, like, guys being guys, boys being boys, or that's just how he is, or there's that Trump at it again. Like, it's just like, you can't, that's not the way that it functions. Like, you have to be ready for people to get behind what you say in a lot of instances, but for every person that gets behind it, there's going to be somebody that's not going to be behind it, and it's going to try to cancel you or to say that what you're saying is problematic. And maybe you should stop and reconsider the way that how you say things affects other people, because I think that we talk about a lot of these conversations. We have these conversations about these deep philosophical concepts, and a lot of it kind of boils down to empathy most of the time when we're talking about people. I think that we don't need to
Yeah.
redefine it. Like, we need to get to a place where people can empathize with others, which where they can actually put themselves in someone else's shoes and say, like, should I say this thing about, I don't know, Asian people, for example? Because what if I was Asian? Like, how would I feel if I was Asian and I said this thing about Asian people? How would I feel if I said this thing about gay people and I was gay? Like,
Right.
if everyone just stopped for a second and thought that, we would have a lot less of the backlash and a lot less of the the conflict that we have between people. So I think that cancel culture is doing that. There's flaws in it for sure, like we talked about earlier. There's definitely, it's not perfect, but I think overall it's kind of leading us to a place where we're having more empathetic conversations, and we're actually like, whether or not, I think people are genuine, there are some people that are genuinely meaning their statements of apologies, and they're actually really trying to be better. But there are people that don't care, but they actually don't want to mess up their pockets, so they'll avoid saying these things. And I think both things are good. So I'm a fan of keeping things as they are.
Yeah, and yeah, I understand your perspective. And when you look at the totality, and you also, when I look at what the Pew Research has done in trying to define cancel culture, I feel like there's not going to be a public policy or a national conversation about cancel culture that's going to take it away from the consciousness of people right now. It's just something that exists, and there's the only thing you can do about it is just try to be a better person, you know, just be empathetic. When someone says something wrong, admit to it, own up to it, you know, try to learn to be better. It's
Yeah.
possible, it's
Yeah.
it's possible. People do have space in their heart to forgive others for even the most heinous acts. So if you say a wild rap lyric, if you don't tip at a restaurant, if you're abusive to your coworkers and employees, you can be brought to task and you can be forgiven if you show repentance to some degree and some level of acknowledgement of what your actions have done being wrong or offensive to people. So let's just try to be better, y'all.
Yeah, for sure. Like, that's all I think I couldn't say it any better. Like, you just have to try to be better. You have to continually try to learn, because there's going to be more groups of people that we don't understand. Like, when we're 60 years old, if I'm blessed to live that long, like, there's going to be a new group of people that I don't understand, but I can at least try to empathize with them. Like, they may add more letters to the LGBTQIA plus community. They might add more, but you can't, like, rather than rolling your eyes at it, maybe just try to understand that there's more people that have different experiences in you, and try to continue to learn and grow and be better, rather than being stuck in, this is my definition of the world and this is how things are, and everything else that's outside of that is weird.
Yeah,